Welcome to Match Memories. Probably come as no surprise, in this episode I'm going to cover the recent FEEDERFEST festival which took place on Inniscarra Reservoir only last week. So, where do we start? Well, big shout out to Daiwa UK who came on board this year as a main sponsor, joining Census Ireland and Heineken. What they brought to the party I think has been seen and has been believed. The work that both Howell and Ryan did in broadcasting daily updates of the going-ons on the bank was just phenomenal, and a big well done to them boys, because some of the weather they had to contend with earlier in the week, I wouldn't have been like to in their shoes, so well done guys. It was very well received. So for me, where did my festival week start? Well, festival week started actually the week before the festival. Because I hadn't been getting out in the bank as much as I'd have liked to, I decided to head down to Cork and fish a few open matches that were taking place on down there, feeder matches. Basically, I wanted to get in the swing of things, get my gear right, get my feeding right, and just get into the rhythm of catching roach. Hadn't done it for a while, and that is very, very important, especially when you're competing against some of the caliber of angler that takes part or that competes in the FEEDERFEST. If you're not in your game, I tell you won't play. That's basically it. So I sorted out a few things and then matches. Rod lengths, got my rigs bang on. Actually, same rig I've used for years. I'm just going to run you through it here while we're on that topic. It's more or less a sliding rig. It's made up on 2 meters of 8-pound Daiwa sensor. So there's enough stretch in that to allow, when fishing more or less braid direct, that you won't bump off fish. So starting up here, I have a little knot that I butt a stot up against. The reason for that is when you land a fish and you're unhooking the fish, without that the feeder will slide up to the tip of the rod. That just slows things down, as you have to bring it back to you every time you want to fill the feeder. So that's the only reason. That is sliding on probably 8 inches between the stot and the float stop. So the float stop here, and that just protects the knot of the twizzled line. There's about 6 inches of twizzled up line which acts as a boom, anti-tangle. I have a loop at the end of it, and to that I attach 50 centimeter hook length of 0.185 tournament. Hook wise, generally 10s and 12s. I've then made up, actually, while we're here now and looking at it, I'm just going to, the feeder, the cat's out of the bag on these feeders. They're an awesome feeder that are going to be available next year. The Daiwa window feeder, a big window, big holes at the top, makes the feeder empty very, very fast, which is exactly what you want for speed roach fishing. The shape of them, they just don't seem to tangle, or they don't seem to catch the rocks as cage feeders do on Inniscarra. These just seem to help when you're on a real snaggy swim. So shot leader wise, I like to go to these festivals prepared, so I will bring about 30. I know it's maybe overkill, but I'll have them with me in my box. Should I snap off, crack off, have to pull for a break, I know I have spares. I'm back fishing in seconds. Happens to every angler down there. There are snaggy pegs. Nothing anybody can do about that. The organisers, Trev and Debbie, they do their utmost to get anglers on the best pegs possible, but you never know. The water levels are fluctuating, so it's snaggy one day, the next day it's not if the water levels are low. So being prepared is of the utmost importance. You can see here, hook lengths, 10s and 12s. That's all I really bring. I like using a red hook, simply because I've caught so many fish plumbing up on red hooks, bare hooks down in Cork. I think when you're fishing a single maggot, that it helps. Helps get bites. I don't know, is it the flash or what, but it definitely, for me, it helps anyway. So there you have it, my hooks, my rigs. Rod wise, this year I've used the Inzon Super Slims, and I cannot fault them. Now, I paired them with 4,000 size reels. Initially, on the 9-foot rod, I used a 3,000, but the 4,000 just gave me more winding power and just seemed to be better all around for the job in hand. Braid wise, 0.10 J braid, which I attach the 2 meters of mono. And that's about it. Now the only difference is I've added 3/4 ounce tips to these rods. Both 9 and 10 foot rods I've used, all with 3/4 ounce tips. They're just the tip I use for roach fishing in Cork. I did bring some 11 foots, but I don't believe they saw the light of day. It was all, the 9 foot actually was used about 70% of the time. What a gem of a rod that I absolutely love using now. It is one hell of a rod. Not just for the money, it is one hell of a rod. So, festival starts Sunday night. We've 2 pre-festival opens. The Trev's Tackle Ireland on the Saturday. So that's an important match for me, so was this year, because I did rubbish in it. I think I actually came last on the bank, or definitely in my section of the cables, C section, which turned out to be. And it was a lesson learned, and a very, very valuable lesson. Came away not catching anything, 32 fish. Jacko won the section, I think 2 pegs to my left. And I couldn't figure it out. I was like, tried different distances, but what I think actually happened to me is I overfed. I put a lot of feed into my ground bait at the start. Chopped worm, minced corn, pinky, castor. And I think I just blew the peg. So coming away, obviously very disappointed, but thinking I'd learned a lesson that I was going to bring into the next day, the Fountain House Open match, where I drew only a few pegs to the left and Jacko drew beside me again. So it was going to be a good leveler and see could I rectify on the mistakes I'd made the day before. Well, as it turns out, I did. I fed very, very little on the Sunday's Open, and just took it nice and steady, fish to my fish, and ended up winning the section. Just bet Jacko, mind you, but it gave me a lot of confidence going into the main event. Cathal Hughes won that match. Well done to him, from the garden centre. I think he had 19 or 20 kilo, great weight. And that was the section that everybody wanted when going into the FEEDERFest. So Sunday night, rotation draw night. Actually a nice surprise from Daiwa. For this year they had a nice commemorative hat for every competitor. So as you paid your money and drew your rotation, you got presented with a nice hat, which is a very, very nice touch. Anyway, I think every angler was hoping to draw E-rotation, which meant they would start on the garden centre and then move on to the greenway for the rest of the week. The reason for that was simple. Storm of Bet was coming, a lot of rain, and history has shown us that a lot of rain going into the garden centre through the Dripsy River brings a lot of debris, turns the water brown and knocks the fishing on the head. So anglers were hoping to get there earlier in the week before this happened and then move on to the greenway sections. Fortunately for me, I drew A section, which meant I'd be fishing, or A rotation, which meant I'd be fishing A section on Monday, B Tuesday, C Wednesday, and so on. So look, at my plan for the week really and truly was fish for roach. If skimmers showed up, or if I had to fish for skimmers, good and well, but my tack was completely based around fishing for roach in between 15 and 20 metres. Jacko and I had found that a count of 11, or my count of 11, or what he equated to 7 sections, was an ideal depth to catch them in. So plumbing around, luckily I found that depth, I think close enough every day really, between 15 and 20 metres out, which was an ideal distance, and just plugged away at the roach. Day 1, I drawn peg 4. I was happy enough with that draw. Pegs 1 and 2 had dominated the open matches with skimmers. I knew I was in the right area, I had the right depth in front of me. There were worse pegs I could have drawn way up to the right, avoided them thankfully, and I've ended up weighing around, I think it was 180 fish or something for 8.5 kilo. That was enough to win my 5 pegs. Pegs 1 and 2 didn't fish as well that day. Pat Falvey absolutely annihilated the section with 14 kilo of bream further up to my right, but I was well happy coming off that section with 8 kilo. Jacko and I kind of felt that if you were to come off the greenway with around 30 kilo, we felt we'd be there or thereabouts, and that was my target leaving the greenway. Day 2 I was in B section, another early peg on B section, I think it was peg 20. Hydromantis Kondrakas, the Iceman, a phenomenon at this small roach fishing, 2 pegs to my left, and felt I was going to be up against it. Thankfully I caught a few. I think I had about 240 roach that day. And unfortunately I think for a mantis, there was a river coming in there which coloured up the water a bit later in the match. Up to that we were having a real ding-dong battle. But I've ended up winning that section with 10 kilos. So as you can imagine, 18 kilo after 2 days. I wasn't really flying up the leaderboards or anything, but I was continuing to catch the weight I expected of these sections, and I was doing pretty well off them. So that kept me sleeping well at night. C section, the cables section, I was kind of fearing because of the open matches preceding the festival. As I said, I'd really struggled and then I had a good day, but there were some bad areas within C section I wanted to avoid. Of course I didn't avoid them. It was probably the toughest match I had all week, as in I could catch a few roach short and I was getting snagged and I had to move out, which meant I was getting into a depth that I wasn't really comfortable with. I felt it was too deep, but by alternating between 2 lines, I kept fish coming. I even had a bonus skimmer that day of about £2, which was very, very welcome. An enjoyable match by the end of the day, but put another 8 kilo on the board, which, again, well happy with it. I hit my target. We were being interviewed throughout the week. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that on the Dive UK Facebook page. Howell and Ryan are going around asking different anglers what their targets were. So I was kind of having that in mind before they arrived, and I had hit my targets the first 3 days. Day 4, I was heading to Turtle Bay D section I quite like on Inniscarra. This section I happened to be split. There were 5 pegs on Ruse 1000, section I hadn't fished before, and the other 12 pegs were on Turtle Bay to the left of Windy Point, Eel Point, Breen Point, you name it. It's where the pink chair is. A good section for skimmers that hadn't been shown this year though. So, but still there were weights of, we'll say 10, 12 kilo of hybrids and that. There were fish to be caught there. Anyhow, long story short, I drew peg 68 down on Roofs 1000, the in peg of the whole greenway. And luckily for me, I had Pete Townsend on 67 to my left, and next to him was Dave Micklewright, 2 very good anglers who they felt to catch a few bream to boost their weight at this stage of the festival. That meant for me, I had nobody to compete on a shorter roach line against me, and that obviously helped me out a lot. Long story short, I had a lovely day's fishing. I then caught 220 fish or something, 220 roach, which weighed 14 kilo, which put me now into 3rd position going into the final day, the garden centre. Now, something I haven't mentioned is all the anglers were 100% spot on, hoping to get the garden centre earlier in the week, because come Wednesday, the garden centre went from catching a maximum of 22 kilo, 20 kilo winning, to plummeting to 4 kilo, with a lot of anglers struggling even to get a bite on Wednesday. Thursday it had picked up slightly again, so it was a case of fingers crossed. We had a massive amount of rain Thursday night. The talk of the draw was, will the garden centre hold up or will it just plummet once again? Well, everybody felt it was going to plummet, including myself. I was gutted, absolutely gutted. 3rd going into the final day, and then possibility of drawing a section that just would not fish. Anyway, drew my peg 80. Wasn't 100% sure where it was. Talked to anglers in the bank, put me right. I was happy with that. But on arriving to the garden centre, those that know it was more or less straight in off the old car park. I was absolutely over the moon to see where peg 80 was. If I had a choice of picking any peg out of the bag on the garden centre, that's where I would have picked. I won a match off it, one of the previous open matches. So as you can imagine, confidence was high. The only concern I had was the river was completely chocolate. Now, saying that, there were the odd fish topping, which gave me some hope. Anyway, all set up, loads of time, talked to the anglers, nobody knew what was going to happen. All in came, we all chucked out. Within 5 minutes, we were all looking at each other. Nobody had a bite. Finally, I got a fish, a perch. I think it was after 9 minutes. Never saw a bite, must admit to that. Reel him in, fish on, at least I hadn't blanked. Put the little bugger in my net and he turned belly up and died. So he didn't count. I was gutted. After an hour and a half, I put 6 fish in the net. Or 5 really, because the perch didn't weigh. Thankfully one of them was a skimmer around 1.5 pounds, but it was a right struggle. Didn't know what to do. My plan really was, when I'm not catching an Inniscara, and this is another little tip, I will not leave it out there for more than a minute. If I haven't had a bite in a minute, I'm reeling in and I'm recasting. I'm trying to create noise, keeping bait going through the swim. Always working, and that is so important in Scara. Trying to track something. Well, I got a bite from a roach, didn't think anything of it. Next chuck, another bite. Next chuck, another bite. The swim just completely turned around. I don't know what happened. The colour, as far as I'm concerned, stayed the same, but something happened. The fish just got their heads down for everybody. Started slowly but surely fishing. So, long story short, I've ended up with just shy, I think, of 200 fish. Weighed in, came down, Howlin' Ryan came down to me, interviewed me after. I felt I'd maybe around 11 kilo. Absolutely delighted to weigh in 14. Really gave me a chance. Phone call to Jacko, as you do. How's Tony done? Tony Hopkins was winning going into the last day. He had a lead of 3 kilo on me. I heard he'd struggled. You don't like to hear that for any angler, but on the last day, look, I'm not going to lie. The fact that he struggled gave me a chance, and, you know, not going to apologise for that. I was happy enough. Sorry, Tony. Willem, couldn't find him. Willem was coming second. He had 2 kilo ahead of me. I had heard that due to the Daiwa updates that he had over 100 fish with 2 hours to go. So, as you can imagine, I was concerned about that. Anyway, he's weighed in 8 kilos. So, as I said, I had 14, which leapfrogged me a few places. So, right into first place. I was absolutely over the moon. Don't think words can describe how I felt, but having Daiwa UK, all them boys over from Scotland, you know, sponsoring the event, fishing the event, reporting on the event, to actually perform and do well in front of them was ideal. But you know what? The whole week wasn't really just about the fishing. I do not think I have ever fished a more enjoyable festival. All the guys, all the competitors back in the pubs and even, they were just laughing in it. We'd Phil McCaffrey down, one of my best, truest angling friends at 83 years of age. The enthusiasm he has for angling is unbelievable. He sat out in that rain in the storm Monday, Tuesday. I won't say he didn't complain, because he did complain, but that even made it more fun. Just the crack was mighty. All week the crack was mighty. So to have that and actually win the festival, there's nothing like it. I remember driving home Saturday morning and just, I couldn't believe it. Hats off to everybody. I mean, Debbie and Trevor were flawless with their running of the festival. Daiwa, Senses, Heineken, the input they had into it, just made for one of the best weeks of the year. So can't wait to get out again. I hope you've enjoyed this little video, and I hope I do an exact same thing this time next year.